And how are you today, Matthew?
Yeah, good, thanks, Chris. Good to be chatting to you again.
It is. It's come around again, the technology chat. Now, we're going to talk about sleep first up today. Is technology to blame here? I think it is, the screens.
It does seem to be millions of Australians, Chris, aren't getting enough sleep, and they're blaming phones for not getting enough sleep. The problem is that so many people now are getting into bed, tucking themselves up, getting all nice and comfortable, and then getting on their phone and staying to work away. And so in a recent survey, 89% of people said that technology was having a negative effect on Australians. It's giving technology a bad rap, Chris. I don't like it. Technology is such a wonderful thing, but you've got to use it in moderation. If you're younger, it's even worse. 18 to 29-year-olds, 94% of them said that sleep is being negatively impacted by the technology that they use. So it's a bit scary considering that about a third of us across the nation get less than the minimum recommended amount of 7 hours of sleep a night. 7 hours, Chris, I dream of 7 hours sleep a night, excuse the bad pun there, but that seems like a lot of sleep. I've got too much to do to sleep for that long.
And people are turning to things like medication. I see where they've eased the restrictions on the imports of melatonin for personal use, but even that's not a silver bullet because your brain builds up tolerance pretty quickly. But
yeah. So you're right. People do turn to some medications to try and get enough sleep. Maybe they just need to, and dare I say, Chris, just turn their phone off. Maybe that's a good idea. There's some research that shows that if you are feeling that it is being impacted, your sleep's being impacted by technology, simple things like actually putting the phone in a different room when you go to sleep. So many people sleep with it beside their bed, and obviously that can have a negative impact because they just can't help themselves. They'll lean over towards it. The one that really scared me, Chris, was that 1 in 10 people said that they've checked their smartphone during sex. What's going on there?
Wouldn't be surprised. So much for honour among thieves. A hacker has helped police orchestrate the sting of the century with a secret crime app.
Yeah, for some reason, Chris, I can't quite work it out. This particular hacker wants to remain anonymous himself. He actually was caught. The police caught him as a hacker, and they said, we've got an idea. We want you to write an app for us that will be used by the underworld as a secret messaging app. We want all the messages that are going to be used to be encrypted. We want thieves to feel confident that all their messages are encrypted, which they would be. But of course, the police themselves would have access to all the information going through on this app because they would have the encryption capabilities. So they did this. They created the app. He got a reduced sentence for his part in this. He also got paid $120,000. But they basically then put some jailbroken phones, and jailbroken phones have had the normal operating system removed and an alternative put in there. So they had some jailbroken phones they put into some underworld groups. They had this particular app called Anom, A-N-0-M. They had that installed there. And before they knew it, all the crims were saying our preferred messaging app was Anom. So they were using this particular app. They were messaging on this. Drug deals were being done, hits were being set up on it. So all these people using this app, and then finally it came to the point where authorities in different countries around the world, so you had people in Australia working on this, you had people in Canada, people in the US, for example, and they all then did a simultaneous raid where they basically went and raided the worst of these users of this particular app. And they seized significant weapons. They seized about $48 million in cash. They stopped drug deals. They reckon they stopped about 150 murders with this. So it was a really clever process to go through, and it also shows you a bit about how much technology is used in every individual part of our life, including across the whole underworld.
Here's an interesting one. If the police ask for my phone password, do I have to give it to them? And what would be the case if you were in Ireland?
Yeah, look, I don't want to give too much legal advice here, Chris, outside my area of expertise, but in Australia, I think you actually do have the ability to say no to that when someone, a police officer, just asks you casually on the street. If you've got nothing to hide, then it probably isn't that big an issue.
But in a warrant.
Yeah, that's right. But in Ireland, they've now changed the laws to give the police power to ask for your password. Now, sure, it still comes along with a warrant, so they can't just have police randomly walking down the street asking for passwords of people's phones, but it is a change in their legislation. In the past, they didn't have that ability. And when you think about the last story I've just talked about, how much mobile phones are used with criminal people at the moment, then coming along and searching your car, searching your house, if you wanted to find out what someone was really up to, searching their phone would make a lot of sense. So in Ireland now, the law has changed. Police can ask for your password, and you are bound by the law to actually hand over that password to let them go through your phone.
We're talking technology with Matthew Dickerson, and could a modern phone help revitalise ancient languages?
I really love this idea, Chris, that you're taking something as ancient as an Indigenous language, an Aboriginal language that might have been around for 60,000 years, and we're actually losing some of those languages now, and so that's a real shame. There are some people who are really focused on trying to keep those languages alive, but using a mobile phone to keep those ancient languages alive, I think, is a great mix of old and new. And so there's an app being produced. There's an app being produced for everything, Chris, but there's an app being produced for this to try and basically go through and have pictures and the words that are the ancient vocabularies. And now this can apply for a whole range of different ones. The one they're doing here is the Nagalama language, but obviously it could be used for Wiradjuri language or whatever language that people wanted to do. And it's just a matter of someone putting the time into combining the pictures and the vocabulary for then people to use that. Young kids that want to learn it, people that are teaching some of that in the schools can use it. Basically, it's a way for an ancient language to still be revitalised and kept alive, and then hopefully kept alive forevermore, because once you've got it set up on that phone, then it doesn't matter if some person moves on or passes away that's got all that language in their head. It's all been put down in some sort of app. So I think it's a great idea.
Now, the wearables market continues to explode with new features being added all the time. What is Apple planning in future releases?
There was a time, Chris, when I was told by an expert in technology that you would never be able to have a watch that could possibly monitor your heart rate. You always needed to have a chest band of some description to pass that information onto a watch. Now, that seems pretty silly now, given the fact that there's so many watches available that pick up your heart rate from your wrist. They've gone to the point now where already we can do an ECG. Now, again, if you did an ECG and it wasn't great, then I'd still say go to a doctor and have something done with a bit of equipment, a bit more expensive than a watch on your wrist. But Apple's already planning to introduce 2 new features, probably not in the round of watches that would come out this year. We're probably talking about 2022 or 2023, but they could measure 2 main things, blood glucose and body temperature. Now, blood glucose, for anyone that suffers from diabetes, it's normally a prick of blood they need to be able to measure the blood glucose. So I have no idea how they're going to do it, but that's one of their plans. And that would be fantastic for anyone with any form of diabetes to be able to monitor that blood glucose and have your watch continually monitor that, and obviously give you warnings about levels being at levels that are outside the optimum there. And body temperature, we've talked before about how body temperature is used for early detection of flu-like symptoms or flu or COVID-19, obviously. Then if you can have early detection through that, then the idea is to monitor that on a regular basis. So having a watch on that's constantly monitoring your body temperature means that you would get an early indication of any sort of issue with your body. So 2 great things that I think would really make a difference, and it really gives you an idea of where we're going in this whole wearables market. What we're ending up with in our wrist is not just a phone, not just something we can do messages with, not just play songs with, but really gets to that point where it's monitoring our entire body to see if we can make sure we can stay on top of our health. I just don't know where they're going to go next, Chris.
Very interesting. Now, Windows 10, for people still using Windows 10 on the PC, Microsoft has announced the end of support for Windows 10, have they?
They have. They haven't even released Windows 11 yet, and they're already announcing the end of support for Windows 10. Now, it's not in the immediate future. It's a few years down the track. 14th of October 2025 is when Windows 10 will have support officially finished by Microsoft. Now, when support officially finishes, essentially they might keep doing updates for bug fixes, for problems, but they won't introduce any new features. And it's been a while since Windows 10 was released, and Microsoft used to have a new operating system that came out about every year and a half, almost like mobile phones. They were coming out with it regularly. They've changed that now, and this version of of Windows 10 has been out for a number of years, and they do major releases that are major updates every year, or sometimes even twice a year. But this is a signal that Windows 11 is on the way. And there's been a few subtle hints from Microsoft that they'll be soon announcing it. It might even be as soon as next week, Chris. They've released an 11-minute video video. They've talked about a new event next week that starts at 11 a.m. They've got some nice little shadow images of two windows that look like an 11 in the shadow. So they've got a few little subtle hints that Windows 11 might be announced. So we might be talking next week or in the next 2 weeks about Windows 11 announcement, when it will be available and what new features, because having a new version of any operating system, any software, any phone for that matter, is all great, but you need some features that are going to drive you to want to have that actual update rather than just end of support being the time to do it, having some reason. So I'm interested to see what things Windows is, or Microsoft is announcing in Windows 11 that will really get us excited and want us to go and upgrade all our PCs.
You'll hear it first in technology right here on 2WEB with Matthew Dickerson. Now, you've got a new podcast. It's a weekly podcast, is it, Matthew?
Yeah, it takes some of these topics that we talk about. We add a few extra topics in there. I've got a guy by the name of James Eddy who does it with me. So James and I talk about topics just in a similar way that you and I chat. Chris, it just goes for longer. It's about a 30, 35-minute episode each week. And it's going very well. We got to number 12 in technology podcasts in Australia so far.
And how can people join the podcast?
It really is whatever you typically use in your podcasting. So if you're on an Apple phone, you use Apple Podcast. If you're using a Google phone, you might use Spotify or Google Podcast. There are probably 20 different major podcasting apps out there. However you normally listen to your podcast, if you just search for Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson, you'll find that podcast there and have a listen.
Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson on your favourite podcast app. Good luck with it. And what time is that on at?
It's released every week, so you can listen to it any time.
It's released so that they can listen to it any time.
Any time at all.
Right.
That's right. So Monday mornings each week there's a new version or a new episode that comes out, and then you just open up any time and you can listen to those. There's 11 episodes that have been uploaded so far, and away you go.
And, of course, people can still listen on YouTube. Thanks, Matthew Dickerson. We will talk again next week.
Right. Thanks, Chris.